But yeah, when they said it, was like, I looked, God, who was it?
Make sure you hit this record here.
Okay.
And then you know how to do.
But you just can't say that right now. It's just not something you can do.
All right, we're live on YouTube. We're live on Facebook. We're now Facebook Live. And all you have to do is hit record. All you have to do is hit record on vMix.
How come that's doing that over there?
It does that.
It's totally fine.
Yeah, it typically does that. I don't know. I'm not sure why, but the
How long is it going to do it for?
it won't stop. It's just going to do that.
It's just going to be one frozen image the whole time?
Yeah, but if you look, see? We're good. You can see I'm already there.
All right. Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, I am recording.
Okay. Very, very good.
Mucho goodo.
Yeah. Mucho goodo.
I'm going to move these so I can see them a little bit better.
Okay. I only did that because that screen started blinking the last time with vMix, so I didn't know if it was like just a system overload for it or...
Could have been. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Art thou ready? First thou shalt take out the holy pin.
Today, I am here to give you the assurance that I have not forgotten you.
If we want to see the new evangelization become more than just jargon, if we want to see it grow legs and gain traction and change the world, we have got to take seriously our responsibilities as husbands and fathers, and especially as sons of God.
I want to propose to you then that something that our world is desperately in need of in the midst of this crisis is Catholic Christian masculinity.
If you want to be a good father, then bring your children to confession with you.
I can't get there unless I become a man of ascesis, a man of asceticism, a man of training.
A man not doing penance, a man not disciplined, is not a man.
You guys have upped your game.
You know what, guys? I gotta say, I love the concept of Man Show.
Warning: the Catholic Man Show is about to begin.
Welcome to the Catholic Man Show. We're on the Lord's team, the winning side, so raise your glass. Adam Minahan here, sitting with David Niles. We are without Juan this evening, so it is inevitable that some of our equipment will malfunction throughout this episode. I apologize in advance, but shout out to Joan Posada. It is her birthday weekend, and thus that is why Juan is not here. Jim is in the house, though. Thank you, Jim, for being with us, sipping on a little bit of bourbon this evening. We're going to talk about venial sin. We're going to talk about our weekend.
Yes.
Which will be a lot of fun.
Figured that we would do that.
And talk a little bit about bourbon. Talk about this man cure that I have today, which is a book, but it's a different type of book. It's not a Catholic book.
Is it good?
Is it good?
Is it a good book?
Well, I wouldn't.
Then it's a Catholic book.
I was about to say, like, do you think that I would try to promote a bad book?
No.
What is your implication
I
there?
just didn't want to give away the punchline. You
Gotcha.
know?
Okay.
You gotta trap the victim before you spring the trap. You're the victim, and I trapped you. I got you to admit it's a good book. Therefore, it is a Catholic book. AKA, you're wrong. You said it wasn't, but it is.
Okay. I'm going to let you have that.
Thank you. No, you can't. Yeah, very kind of you. After I earned it fair and square.
Yes.
It's like, oh, yeah, your house, I'll let you have that one. Your kids, all right, well, I'll let you have those. It's very gracious of you.
That's a heck of an analogy.
Yeah. It's already mine. You can't just let me have it. It's already mine.
Okay, so I already gave a shout out to Joan for her birthday. Good there. So
I want to give a shout out to Paul Nesbitt, brother of
Brother Fall.
brother of Father Nesbitt of
Okay.
Clear Creek Abbey.
Okay.
Mhm. Shout out.
What about
Paul.
Eric Morey? Let's give a shout out to Eric Morey too.
I don't know if he listens to the show, but yeah.
He probably doesn't. However, I did find out that he educates my children.
That's generous of him.
Yes, in co-op. He's one of the co-op teachers.
Nice.
Yes.
He's also a good police officer here in the Diocese of Tulsa in Eastern Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Let's refer to all of our police officers not by like their district, but by their diocese.
By the diocese. I was telling Luke about our weekend, and I was saying Father Morey was the one who gave us a talk. Awesome talk, by the way. Just we'll talk about that in a little bit. And I was like, and he has a brother named Eric, and he's like, yeah, Dad, I know. He teaches me at co-op. And I was like, oh, awesome.
Hi, Father Morey.
Yeah. So anyway, we just got back this afternoon from Clear Creek Abbey. We went on.
That's why I'm so tired.
Yeah, he is a little tired. I'm doing all right, but
I don't even know why. I got plenty of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just I don't know, dude.
It's one of those you have to have a vacation from your vacation type of things.
When Pamela got to the monastery today, to the abbey, she said, "Your eyes are puffy."
Really?
Yeah, and I don't know. I guess they were.
So we went on to Clear Creek Abbey, Dave and I and Juan, and then probably 4 or 5 other guys. David Biddle put it on for us.
There were 9 of us total. We were a fellowship. I know that you don't get that reference because you have never read or watched The Lord of the Rings. Which is, you might go to hell for it. I'm just going to say, definitely purgatory.
Okay.
Definitely. I mean,
don't
even act like that's your opinion, dude. Okay.
What'll be
happen.
Absolutely hilarious is if, by God's grace and mercy, I make it up to heaven and I'm like floating around. I'm like, J.R.R. Tolkien, what's up, man? And then we end up being best friends for all of eternity.
Well, you'll be best friends with everybody. So if he's there, you will be best friends with him.
Yeah.
So I would expect that to happen.
That'd be
but
awesome.
First, he will shun you.
before you become best friends?
Right.
Yes. So
you know what's good about The Lord of the Rings? In fact, I was reading it today, actually. This afternoon.
Really?
I was on Sundays. I did this. I started several months ago. I don't do it every Sunday, but on Sundays, I read The Lord of the Rings to myself.
Oh, nice.
Just when the
kids
are at nap/quiet time,
mm-hmm.
I sit down by the window
and read some Lord of the Rings.
Read maybe a chapter or two of
Dude,
Lord of the Rings.
I love being able to. So we went on a retreat.
Yes. Let's first say what it is. Clear Creek. What is it?
It's an abbey. It's a Benedictine monastery, cloistered abbey. They are all about the liturgy, making the liturgy beautiful. They chant. It's all in Latin. The liturgy is all in Latin.
Yeah.
And we had a chance to stay.
Very traditional Benedictine.
Yes, and we had a chance to stay like in the monastery. Like not.
Yeah, so we had a
guest house,
we had
but like
cells. Cells in the enclosure, not in the enclosure, but in the cloister.
Correct. Yes, that's accurate. And so it was so much fun. We got a chance to eat with them and pray with them, and I had a lot of chance to do some reading time, like silence. Like, there was a lot of silence, which was exactly what I needed.
Right.
It was just amazing, and I had a chance to read a lot, which is why we're talking about our topic today on Vino Sin is due to me reading this weekend.
So I told you that I was going to actually make this my next topic. We talked about, but you beat me to it fair and square. So I'm going to let you have that one.
Nice.
But I was hoping to go to confession beforehand. That was my plan.
I did.
I got. I know. I
stood you up though for the rosary.
Right.
To do
that. And that's okay. I got my days mixed up. I thought St. Benedict had it on Thursday. It's Wednesday. It's Tuesday and Wednesdays,
not Wednesday
and Thursday. And
right.
so I ended up just going on Friday evening when we got there.
Mm-hmm.
And the monk was just an incredible confessor. Because I had been to confess, I didn't have mortal sin to confess that I knew of, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was confessing venial sins, but he took them very seriously.
Oh, good.
Right. And it just gave me some words about, for instance, failing in moderation or temperance,
mm-hmm.
And how we debase ourselves by choosing lower goods over higher goods. And he also had the cutest, he's like very old, so he had like this cute French accent. And that really made it like, oh, I should really, like when an old guy's talking to you,
mm-hmm.
you just you listen to them more, right?
Right,
And so,
right.
But anyway, it was like very inspiring, the words that he gave me in the confessional, and it was just this very topic. So I'm glad we're talking about it.
Cool. Okay, so we haven't even gotten into the drink yet. So we're drinking.
Let us discuss.
Belle Meade bourbon. It is a.
What's a sour mash? Is that? I mean, is all whiskey a sour mash, or is this different because it's a sour mash? It says sour mash on the bottle.
Yeah, a lot of them.
I don't know. I don't know about the mash.
I'm not sure.
I don't actually know a lot about the mash.
I know the TV show MASH.
I
watched a lot of MASH.
Are you talking about Nash?
No.
You're talking about MASH.
Yeah.
Okay. I know more about the finished product. I know more about drinking it than I do about making it.
It's 45% ABV. I'm cutting you off. Is what I did.
I saw that.
They basically right now the recipe that they have is apparently older than the Jack Daniel's recipe of whiskey. Now they're trying to get it going again, and so right now they don't have their actual own. They're farming out a lot of it right now, and then blending it together. I think they have 4 different types of barrels that they blend together for this, ranging from 6 to 8 years. So it's 6 to 8 years is a long time for a bourbon, and
is it?
Yeah, 4 years typically. Boom.
Get them out?
Get them out there, yeah. But so that their goal is to start.
I thought you had to be 5 years to be bonded.
You have to be 4 years to be considered whiskey.
Oh, I thought it was like 30 days to be considered whiskey.
Well,
yeah, I think it's only 30 days because
it's 4 years for something. Anyway.
Oh, who's the distillery that they pressure Cleveland whiskey? Yeah, they age it in barrels for 30 days so that it can technically be whiskey.
Maybe it's bourbon. What are your thoughts, though?
But bourbon is different.
Yeah, maybe it's bourbon. Maybe I'm getting them mixed up.
I think it's okay. You can tell that it's a little on the younger side. It's got a little bit more heat to it. A little bit of an alcohol burn. But it does have, I would say, a medium length finish. Not a long finish, but it's not a short finish.
I tell you what, last week's bourbon that we had, the whiskey or Wyoming whiskey that we had,
that one was a phenomenal
bourbon.
I've already forgotten about that. I need to go get some of that because
it's really good.
Because you said it was cheap too.
Yeah, like $38-$40.
Yeah, man, I'm getting some of that.
But this one's good. This one was,
how much was this one?
This is $40 as well.
Okay.
It was one of their. I fell for the employee pick of the month. This was their. Which is a lot of times it's like we got to get this off the shelf.
Yeah. The fish is a week old. We need to push it.
Right. But I still think it's good.
It's good.
It has a little bit more of a medicinal finish to me.
Yeah.
That I would prefer, but.
I'm not picking it at $40 over the Wyoming whiskey for sure.
Right. So when we get back, we'll continue talking about Clear Creek and then talking about Vino Sin. We're on the Lord's team, the winning side. So raise your glass and cheers to Jesus. We don't have. That was Jim's arm, by the way. That was Jim.
There he was, ladies and gentlemen.
Jim. Father Sean Donovan is watching apparently right now, and he is going to be on the show soon. Next month I've kind of pinned him down. He's also going to help.
It's about time.
He's going to, for our patrons, he's going to teach them how to pray the rosary in Latin. And an extra benefit for being a patron.
Benedicite.
So, anyway, Dave, let's keep rolling. What do you think? You good with that?
I'm so ready, bro. Like you don't even know. You don't even know. This is the O. That's the O
Correct.
this time. Great. None of it worked.
It works that time. You have to stop it. Oh yeah. See, this is why we need Juan. That one.
I found it. That was quick. I
wasn't
found
bad.
it. That was not so bad, y'all.
If that's the worst, we're good. If that's the worst that happens tonight, we're good.
Totally fine. Be totally fine.
Jimbo Baggins. There's so many nicknames that we've given you over
I know,
the course.
and they all feel so right, don't they? Every single one feels so right.
I'm digging them, Jimothy.
Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. I'm David Niles here with Adam Minahan and the man with so many names, the spinster over here.
This segment of the Catholic Man Show is brought to you by the Catholic Woodworker. Go to thecatholicwoodworker.com. TCMS is a promo code if you're looking for quality, handcrafted rosaries. Catholic Woodworker is where you want to go. Also, their home altars are phenomenal.
See, the thing is, we have a thing, but I don't know how to do it like Juan does. I know how to. That's
so
all.
we blacked it out.
I know how to get it on the screen.
Okay, we'll go back. There we go. So
but that's it.
That's it.
There you go. There it was.
Their home altars, the crucifixes. He's running a bunch of specials of bundles of rosaries. So if you're looking to get your Exodus 90 men Catholic rosaries or your men's group, your Knights of Columbus group, quality rosaries that are going to last, go to thecatholicwoodworker.com.
Your local atheist chapter.
Yes.
Maybe buy them all a rosary.
Yeah. Evangelization.
I think they'll love it.
Yes. So anyway. So Dave, what was your favorite? So we went together, but it was more of a silent retreat, almost like it wasn't technically a silent retreat, but just because of the atmosphere of Clear Creek, it was minimal talking.
The monks observe what they call the Great Silence, which begins after Matins. After Compline. After Compline, Matins is
after Matins,
like
at
as soon as they wake up.
Yeah, as soon as they wake up, we begin. Yes.
And then
it ends at Prime.
After Prime.
After Prime.
Yeah, with the conclusion of Prime. So they observe between that time, and they're mostly sleeping.
Right.
And so they wake up. They wake up at 4:50 on most days. Matins begins at 5:15, and it goes from 5:15 to 6:15. And at 6:15 they begin Lauds.
Right.
And Lauds goes from 6:15 to 6:30, at which time they begin Low Mass. Mm-hmm. And Low Mass goes from 6:30 to 7. So it's not like they have a whole lot of time for chatter,
right?
Okay, in the meantime, right. But they do observe with the Great Silence, and so they ask that of their guests as well. Inside the cloister, if you're outside, that's okay. But silence is just also a part of their
atmosphere,
their lifestyle,
their way of life.
They don't, for the most part, talk. In fact, they observe silence. Unless they need to speak to each other, in the course of their duty or whatever. They have 30 minutes for recreation after lunch, and at which point they may have conversation.
I think it'd be fun to
and they may have 30 minutes after dinner as well.
I don't remember.
It said that on a sign in the library.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not familiar with that on their schedule, but it seemed like that might be the case. I don't know.
What was your biggest takeaway? What did you enjoy the most?
I had sort of a dry retreat. I've kind of almost been expecting this. When I was reading Discernment of Spirits, I did it, and towards the end of the book, I did get the impression that the reason that I was reading this book was because I needed to be prepared for, when I say I had a dry retreat, it was still a lovely and plenty of moments of consolation, but not like overflowing the whole time, and like very often is the case. So, but what I learned from reading that book was very present to me the whole time, and I received consolation from, like, in a different way, just like from the knowledge of being able to say and remember some of the thoughts, to
realizing what was happening.
Exactly. And just to know that this is a trial, and like, this is a good thing. It's not a bad thing, and so it was, the whole retreat was good. Just walking away from my cell phone for a while was really good.
Mm-hmm.
I got to I'm reading another book right now, which I've mentioned, He Leadeth Me. Yes. And that book is just getting super good right now. I'm a little over halfway, and it's just really intense.
Nice.
Really good.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's actually in books. In book. but
Right.
it's not intense.
You're right.
But
you could read it in a tent, though.
Sure, yeah.
If you wanted to. I mean, that would be just fine.
It'd be totally acceptable.
Or just sitting outside of a tent.
Mm-hmm.
You could have 1 foot in a tent.
And 1 foot out.
Right. What about you? What's your favorite?
So I really dug the silence. I needed the decompression. There was a lot of things that I have on my list right now of prayers. Like, I have a lot of things in my life that are approaching me, big life decisions that are approaching me. And so I know that I need guidance. I need wisdom. I need to be open to His will. And so I was very eager to get out there just to surrender myself basically to a weekend of just silence, prayer, and being in front of the Blessed Sacrament.
Yeah.
And so that gave me a lot of consolation. I mean, that gave me a lot of consolation. It was probably one of my favorite retreats that I've been on, actually.
Mm-hmm.
As far as, I've done a Cursillo, I've done Acts, I've done a lot of other different types of retreats. All of them are good. For me, in my state of life right now, currently, it was probably one of my favorite retreats.
Yeah, well, it's not like it was a retreat unlike most, where there's not a retreat leader. You're not
right. We had a lot of freedom that we could do basically whatever we want.
You could have just sat in your room the whole time.
Sure.
I mean, there was no agenda, so
sure.
It was up to everybody. I got to do some work with some of them. I mean, that's one of the options when you stay there. Anybody can go and stay there. Just send an email. Go to clearcreekabbey.com or something. You can look them up. What if that might not be their website, but you can schedule a retreat. If you have young boys, I highly recommend that you do this.
Yes.
Go with your sons and stay a night there and spend the Saturday maybe, and then maybe go home, after dinner on Saturday. I mean, just do however old your boys are. But now that I have a son, like, I am so looking forward to doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I always love when I see it all the time, a father and a son, in the refectory, eating with the monks.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I mean, even if you just did that, go for
a lunch or dinner.
Right? Yeah. Go to high mass, stick around for lunch on a Sunday or something.
Yes.
It's a very formative experience. I always love watching and just being with the monks praying.
Mm-hmm.
The way that they bow, like.
The reverence.
They bow all the way. They're at a 90 degree at the hip when they bow. Mm-hmm. And the reverence that they observe in every aspect of the liturgy.
There's nothing
whether they're
superfluous.
Whether they're just walking to a location, they're doing it in tempo, with reverence, with intentionality. It's just great.
That actually leads us. It's a great segue. Well done.
Thank you.
To our man gear today,
which is a Catholic book, right?
Which is a book. It is not a Catholic book.
It is Catholic.
This is
it's just not about the faith.
This book is by Stephen Rinella. If you guys have ever watched Meat Eater on Netflix or outdoor TV,
all Catholics should eat meat.
It's his newest book.
Except on Friday.
He has a new book out. It's called The Meat Eater Guide: Wilderness Skills and Survival. It's really good. I actually only got it yesterday, but
so you finished it already?
No, but I've been skimming through. I had several things that I was wanting to look into, like what he writes in here.
Yeah.
And this afternoon I was able to go through it, and I'm really enjoying it. It's going to be a great resource for me. So my boys are getting old enough now to where they're going. They're wanting to go hunting.
What's his take on the Incarnation?
I do not know.
For a Catholic book, you'd think he'd cover that.
You think he would? But my boys are very active. They're wanting to go hunting now, fishing now. They're wanting to go camping. They're wanting to go be outdoors, and I highly recommend it, and so and support it. And so there are a lot of times though when we go hunting that I'm not sure exactly what I should bring. What are some things that are necessary for me to bring in the event that something goes wrong and we need to make sure that I have this. It sure would have been nice if I would have had, this paracord or whatever it is. And so he gives like the list that he has of here's survival tactics. Here's like what I would bring to survival bags is what he calls them, I think. And they're just bags that he's already prepped ahead of time. and he just brings them with him every time he goes camping or hunting or something like that, to where he knows this is ready to go. Like, I don't have to be concerned, oh, did I bring this? Did I bring that? He's already prepared for it. It also shows like how the most effective way to harvest the animal that you may have killed, to where you have the most get the most meat out of the deal.
Is this any relation to the show Meat Eaters?
Yes. Did you not hear me? You weren't listening.
No, I wasn't listening to you.
Yes.
Okay.
It is the guy.
Because I've heard that the show is very good. That's what he does. Harvesting. And then exactly.
I feel like that you just haven't been listening to me for the last 5 minutes.
No, I was looking at this book.
Yeah.
5 minutes is a stretch, but I was not listening to you.
Okay. Yes. So I don't necessarily recommend watching Meat Eaters with your sons, because there is a little bit of language. I mean, you decide for that, but just fair warning. But it's a really good book that's gonna help me as a dad feel that I'm gonna be prepared in the event that, like, my son's Luke is gonna want to go squirrel hunting soon, and we're not gonna do squirrel hunting just for the sake of squirrel hunting. If we're gonna go hunting, then we're gonna harvest the meat, and what's the most effective way to do that? I've never skinned a squirrel before, and it gives step by steps. Here's how you should do that.
You ever skinned a smoke wagon?
Yes.
It says in here that you will probably last in a confrontation 2 minutes against an American black bear, 42 seconds against a grizzly bear.
Wow.
It doesn't say that. I made that up.
Nice. So it gives a bunch of tactics, like if something happens, medical stuff. If something happens, here's how you do it. Here's how you trap things. So if you're looking to, as a dad trying to get out there, I want to camp, I want to teach my son the outdoors, but I'm not really sure exactly how to go about it, this is an excellent resource. He just got out, I think during Christmas. So anyway, I highly recommend it. It's been a big help to me already. So when we get back, we're going to talk about venial sin. We'll be right back.
Is it over? I'm sorry. I got distracted. Take that away from me.
This is why I try not to hand you things.
You didn't. I just picked it up.
So what did they feed you?
Food?
Food?
Yeah.
So the food at the monastery is always hearty, I think is the best way to describe it. It's always good. It's not going to be like unless you're there on a Sunday, like Sunday lunch is their big feast, right? Lunch is always their biggest meal throughout the day. But it's always enough that you have as much as you want. You're not going to be hungry.
They bake their own bread, so
right.
You get bread.
Vegetarians or
No.
Uh-uh.
Okay.
No, they're not vegetarians.
They bake their own bread, so you get bread every meal.
And most of what you eat comes straight from their property. They grow wheat.
A lot of it.
They grow wheat, and I mean so like the bread, that's 100% there.
And I feel like that they have their own like recipes of here's the best way to have calorie intake for a healthy work.
Yeah, every meal starts with a soup. Mm-hmm. So they bake this bread, and it's not. A lot of people don't like it because they don't.
Bread.
Well, it's bread designed to go in the soup.
Right.
So it's a hearty, like it's kind of a harder bread. It's
not soft.
It's not.
It's not like
not
Wonder Bread
right,
or
no.
anything like that.
Even if you put jelly on it, it's like it's chewy. It's like hard to bite sometimes. But when you soak it in soup, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what it's baked for a different purpose. And so the soup is always basically kind of a broth. So there will be some pieces, but it's mostly broth.
Has good flavor.
Yeah, it's good. And then they serve in courses. So there's a soup.
Typically, 3 courses?
Typically 3. The second course might have 2 things at the same time.
Like a veggie or potato or
eggs,
something like that.
Something, right. The chef is French, and so he's a very good he's a very good cook. Because apparently all French people can cook. And then there's dessert. The monks don't get dessert most of the time. but the guests do.
So we were sitting there eating dessert, and at the end they also serve coffee during lunch. Was it lunch or dinner? I can't remember.
Well,
Either way,
I don't know. They don't think they serve coffee at dinner.
Yeah, so I think it was lunch. But I was like, did they give us dessert at lunch?
No, I was just kind of thinking that too.
But so we had a dessert. We were gonna get coffee afterwards. They set down a bowl of sugar for the coffee. You know, whenever they, if you want sugar in your coffee.
They brought the sugar out before the coffee.
Right, but the coffee's right there. You know, your coffee cup is right there. So like they're prepping for it. Dave's sitting there eating his dessert. Looks over at the sugar. Takes a big old scoop of sugar and just like dumps it all over his dessert.
I spread it.
Dude, you put a whole spoonful of sugar. I mean,
I didn't pour
sugar.
it like in one spot. I spread it around.
I just started eating it, and I was cracking up because, like, internally, because you can't make any noise. But
yeah, they eat in silence.
Anyway, it was really funny.
The monks eat breakfast standing.
It's all utilitarian purposes. When it comes to breakfast,
I think it's not utilitarian. I think it's more like disciplinarian. You know what I mean? It's not just about getting food in me. I think it's about.
You're probably right.
More of
a
penance.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep rolling. Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. We're going to talk about venial sin today. Over the course of this weekend at our retreat, I've been reading this book. It's called Knowing the Love of God. It's by Father Reginald Garrigou-Lagrange. The little blurb on it is by Dr. Scott Hahn. I don't know if you guys ever heard of him, but who? Dr. Scott Hahn. He says, I urge you to read this book and learn from a true master of the spiritual life. It's put out by Ignatius Press, and it's just different talks that he gave over the course of his life on different topics.
Lagrange?
Yeah, Lagrange, yeah. Garrigou-Lagrange. He died in 1964.
Is that a picture of him?
Yes. Right before, or right at the very beginning of the Second Vatican Council. He was highly influenced by. He's a Dominican, so St. Thomas Aquinas, and JP2 was a big fan of Father Garrigou-Lagrange as well, and pulled a lot of stuff from him.
Well, it says he served as the theological advisor to 4 popes, including St. John the 23rd. Also oversaw the doctrinal work of a man by the name of Karol Wojtyła.
Yes, JP2. So, St. John Paul II.
Mucho!
So, what I'm going to be pulling tonight on venial sin mainly comes out of this. It's mainly
Can I tell you
his
something
writing.
that Garrigou-Lagrange said about venial sin?
Sure.
It's
bad, okay?
He said that one venial sin is worse.
You're gonna just you're just gonna ruin it, huh?
I won't. I'll save it.
Okay.
I'll save it. So
okay.
Anyway, Adam told me this earlier
already,
today,
and so he was just gonna blow it for me. Anyway, so he's talking about venial. He's talking about sin. He's specifically about venial sin. And he brings up the question of, like, do we have this divine hatred for sin? We've talked about before, Dave, how there's a tendency or a trap that you can fall into of glorifying sins of your past.
Yeah.
You know, where you talk about your past sins maybe in a glorified scenario, like, oh, well, I used to do this. You guys don't even know.
Right.
I used
Let me
to
tell you how many beers I used to drink.
Right,
every day.
or whatever whatever it was. And he talks about, you know, we have to have this divine hatred of sin.
Right.
To the point of, like, you know, you just absolutely despise it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I think we at least I constantly struggle with. And he talks about the difference in obviously mortal sin, venial sin. Why don't you give them just a rundown of mortal sin, venial sin for just clarity purposes?
There are three categories. There are 3 necessities for a sin to be considered mortal. In the Catholic Church, we distinguish between the two. A mortal sin is one that destroys the relationship of charity that you have with God. So it destroys. You lose what we refer to as sanctifying grace, which is what you need to get to heaven. If you do not die in a state of grace, is what we'll say, sanctifying grace, then heaven cannot be assured. Well, it could be attained, but it's not assured. The Lord can save who He wants to save. The church does not condemn, does not ever say that a person went to hell.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Not specifically.
So even if it could hypothetically be known he did not die in a state of grace, this church still wouldn't say that he is in hell. Right. But if you are in a state of sanctifying grace, you can have a reasonable assurance of going to heaven. So
the three things
that make a sin mortal would be that it is of grave matter, that you know it is wrong, and you freely choose to do it anyway.
Yes.
So if even one of those is missing, then the sin is not mortal.
Grave, but potentially grave, but not mortal.
Well, it still will be a grave sin, but it will not be a mortal sin.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so,
unless of course the grave is the thing that's missing of the three, then it would just be intentional and
free.
Right?
Yes. So Father Gary Lagrange gives us an analogy of that, how mortal sin is similar to the diseases that strike the body's vital parts, such as like the head or the heart, and how venial sin is similar to the diseases that paralyze the members or organs not absolutely indispensable to life, such as the eyes or the ears, but something that you need. Right, which I think is a great analogy if you think about it, because sure, venial sin isn't going to maybe attack your heart or your brain, something that you actually absolutely have to have.
Right.
But it's not fun limping around, if it attacks your leg or
walking blind.
Or walking blind.
Yeah.
So he talks about how venial sin is a worse evil than any physical evil, because if our God is an infinite God and we do something against an infinite God, that is a
right. I mean, there should be levied an infinite penalty, even for the slightest sin, because it was committed against an infinite God.
Right. And so he says the smallest venial sin is greater evil than all suffering, all disgraces, all ruins, and all purely physical evils.
This is what I was going to say. I was going to say that.
Right. And so that to me, just blows my mind. Not that it's not true, but just how sometimes I take venial sin so lightly.
Right.
Especially even if it's intentional venial sin, I take far lighter than, obviously mortal sin, but how grave it really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I know that I have certainly fell into this trap of just, it's just venial sin, should I really have a seventh cookie?
A seventh.
Well,
I mean, 7 is a perfect number. I mean, so there's a good.
If you put 7 cookies in front of me and then don't watch, I can absolutely eat 7 cookies.
Sure.
I mean, we're talking fresh chocolate chip, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I won't even feel bad. I feel great.
Mm-hmm.
But
Jim has some right
Jim,
now.
Look at that.
Yeah.
There are cookies here.
My wife bought some.
Let me
at
have
Clear
one.
Creek.
I want.
You will not.
Okay. So, we make light of venial sin. I've even made jokes about it before, and I didn't mean anything bad by making the joke, but still, it's like one of those. It's like, it's just venial,
Right.
And did it get a laugh at the time? Yeah, but it doesn't promote.
It'd be flippancy. That would be flippancy.
Right. Yeah. There's still something at least disordered. I mean, at least you would have to say it's disordered to make a joke like that. I mean, those are the kinds of things that at our judgment we will
just be devastated by.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I imagine there will be purgatory time. I mean,
no doubt. He talks about it in here. He talks about
because those. I mean, as if venial sin didn't matter or if it didn't affect you. And then I think that's what Garrigou is saying here, that it still has an effect on the intellect.
Yeah, and he
and
actually
on the
says
soul.
it's an evil. It's an evil to our intelligence.
Right.
Because he says a deliberate venial sin is committed by a soul that is consecrated to God. A deliberate venial sin that is committed by a soul consecrated to God is foolishness. And the Latin word for foolishness is basically the opposite of wisdom. And so he talks about how it's actually an evil to our intellect when we commit venial sin. And it deprives our soul of this precious grace that that God has given us. He's given us all these graces that He wants to help us spread the kingdom of God. Give us these graces to help spread His kingdom, and these instant graces that He gives us by committing these venial sins, we shut that door of those graces. Right. And he talks about this, David. It's amazing. He talks about how, and I've fallen into this trap totally. I was reading this and I thought it was, written for me basically, because I was like, gosh, I've done this. And he talks about maybe I lost that grace at that moment, but I'll be able to get that back. I'll be able to do something to get that opportunity back. And Lagrange actually says, no, the answer is no. You will not ever be able to get that grace back. He says you will not be able to recover it. This grace, 1,000 times more precious than the universe, has been lost forever.
Right.
Venial sin limits the
you can't save grace.
Right. The venial sin limits the sanctifying grace. Its freedom of action. Venial sin does not destroy charity, but paralyzes it. Paralyzes its action and growth, makes it cold, and hinders its emergence. So it often deprives us of the graces in the future because,
right.
Whenever
you're not disposed to receive grace now as well.
Exactly. And, when you commit a mortal sin, you're severed from all, the sanctifying grace. And when you go to confession, you're restored to this sanctifying grace. However, if you've not built up these virtues, if you've not built up a home, a foundation of these theological virtues that can be infused into you, and you continue to commit these venial sins, there's no way of building these up that it doesn't give it oxygen to be able to live. It doesn't give anything to be able for it to live and breathe and work within you. And so even though you are restored to sanctifying grace, you're not fully utilizing the graces. Gosh, I bet Augustine probably wouldn't like how I phrased that, but
he would not.
Neither
would Thomas.
Yeah, but hopefully it makes at least sense.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. And so, this is. People often think in the beginning of their growth in their spiritual life that the spiritual battle is against mortal sin, and there is a part of the battle that is against mortal sin, but that is only the beginning. The real way of perfection is this battle against venial sin.
Right.
This is the one that is hard to conquer.
Right. And saints throughout history have said that the spiritual life actually begins when venial sin is conquered, when you stop sinning venially.
Right.
So when we get back, we'll continue this conversation talking about venial sin.
You can't have a spiritual life when you're constantly destroying your relationship with God.
Right, exactly. We'll be right back. You want to just keep rolling?
See?
Okay.
Hey, this button. See, look, that turns something on and off. Look at that.
Mm-hmm. Sweet.
That is sweet.
Remember, you have to have the vMix clicked and then do it.
I just did that.
There you go.
Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. I'm David Niles, here with Adam Minahan and Jim Spencer. Thanks for sticking around. To you, I say mucho. That's what I say to you.
Grande.
Grande mucho. Ooh. Muy grande mucho.
Sí. So we're talking about venial sin. On the other side of the break, or before the break, we were talking about venial sin.
Yes.
And we were talking about, the importance of the spiritual life being able to grow and the only way that can happen is when we stop even venially sinning. And he makes this, Lagrange makes this very interesting point that I have fallen into time and time again. He says sometimes repeated venial sins drag us indirectly into mortal sin.
Right.
We fall into a dangerous stupor of lukewarmness because again, the venial sin just makes us dumber. Like it just, it makes us callous and makes us not aware of reality. Right, it makes us not aware of being able to participate in the grace that God wants to give us.
Right, because we're choosing lesser goods.
It's prideful. We're saying, God, I know that you have your will that you want for me, but I don't trust you. I want to do what I want to do.
Right. I'm not willing to say no to myself in order to say yes to you, even though I consciously realize that you are a greater good than the one I'm saying yes to. I mean, are cookies a good? Heck yes.
Right.
Obviously.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you don't believe that, then you've never eaten a cookie.
Right.
But they're not God, right? I mean,
right.
Do you think there are cookies in heaven?
No. But he says
You're probably right.
Yeah. And such the state of mortal sin can even surprise us. And how many times we can commit it almost without notice. Right. And how many times at least for me, I know that in my spiritual life, there have been times where I've reflected at the end of the day and been like, oh man, I just willingly committed a mortal sin and didn't even think twice about it. Didn't even pay attention to it, didn't even give it the time of day. I just moved on. And I realized at the end, man, why, how did that happen? I'm surprised. I'm trying.
In this case, you're talking about a sin that is mortal. You knew it was mortal at the time.
Right,
not to be confused, because we made the distinction earlier. Not to be confused,
No,
it's not like you're looking back going, oh, I wonder if that was a mortal sin.
No, I look back.
You knew it was a mortal sin at the time.
I was wow, I'm surprised that I did that. But then
you were, in reflecting, taken by the flippancy with which you did it.
Yeah,
just the casualness of the whole thing. Right.
Yeah, just doing it.
Yeah.
And I wondered, well, how did that path happen? How did that snowball take into effect? And a lot of times, he talks about it in here, if you are continually committing mortal sins, you need to make sure to do examinations of conscience to realize where are the venial sins happening that lead you to these mortal sins.
Yeah.
And
one thing that St. Ignatius of Loyola recommends, which I have personally found to be very helpful, I've admittedly fallen out of the habit of doing it, but is a noonday
examination of conscience.
Thank you. That's what it was. A noon examination and a night. So he recommends doing twice a day, one at noon and one at night. And when I was doing that, it was amazing. I should start doing it. I'll try to start doing that again, because at the end of the day, you look back and you say, this is what I did wrong. I'm going to try better tomorrow. When you're doing it at noon in the middle of the day, you're saying, oh, this is what I'm doing wrong so far. You say, I'm going to do better right now. Right. There is an immediacy to its effect that I can
take action.
I can change that right now. I will amend my ways now. And so it instead of just being a rear view mirror sort of thing, it's a present exam. It's more of a present examination.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So he talks about also the ways that we can become, because a venial sin just kind of dulls us. It makes us lukewarm about certain things. It makes us just apathetic. Right. A lot of times venial sin,
causes vices is what it does.
Absolutely, it causes vices. And one of the big vices is just apathy, especially for men.
Yeah.
He even talks about, he actually mentions that how a lot of men are succumb to a lot of their senses. Temperance is a really big problem, and all it does is it leads them to apathy of everything.
Right.
And so he talks about
I think the reason we do that is because it's we don't want to live up to our vocation. All men have a vocation as like a guard. So if there's something going wrong, it's our responsibility to do something about it. It's our responsibility to stand up to injustice. We're the enforcers of virtue in the world.
Right.
And so the only way that we can reject that part of all men. The vocation of all men is by apathy, where we can whatever.
Right. I don't even care.
I don't care.
It's like this whole lukewarmness, which God does not speak very highly of lukewarm.
So like I'm like 20% Canadian, so like whatever.
Right. So one of the things he gives four different ways.
I don't mean to slight all of our Canadian
listeners.
fans out there.
Right. He gives four ways to escape this lukewarmness.
Okay.
The first one is a good retreat.
Ooh, I know how to do that.
That's what.
I know where you should go.
It's like punch me right in the mouth, right? I was reading this and I was saying like, yes, I'm doing it. Like a lot of these things I need to cut out. And then it's like, okay, so how do I do it? And then at the end of the chapter, it was like, here's how you do it. Go on a good retreat. And it's like, good.
Okay, good. I'm better than I realized.
He also says, a good spiritual direction, from a spiritual director. But he also emphasizes it doesn't actually have to be a spiritual director, but spiritual direction even from a good close friend that is a holy friend, fraternal correction, if you will.
Okay.
And then he says a lot of times it's just a heavy cross that you bear.
What is a heavy cross?
Being able to emerge from this state of lukewarmness.
So God will find a heavy cross.
God will give you a heavy cross.
So
to bear.
Just be willing to not because sometimes like sin itself can be a cross. Right, like it causes great suffering, and it's not one that you.
Well, a lot of times,
in that case, it's not one that you should bear. It's one that you should remove from your life. You know what I mean?
Well, the cross would actually be doing the good,
yeah. I mean, I just want to make sure because I didn't read what he was saying.
Right.
You have a bullet point here, and so
right. So, but basically, what he's saying is a lot of times, in order to emerge from this lukewarmness, God will
embrace the cross.
Carry your cross, pick up your cross and follow me.
Okay.
And then the last one he says is like, so a lot of times it comes from a great humiliation, realizing I am just wrong. And that's happened to me recently as well. And so it's just like a lot of times God has to break down the pride because
you're not familiar with the sensation.
Right. So, venial sin is caused, any sin is caused by pride. It's the root of all evil, and it's saying like, no, not thy will be done, but my will be done.
Right.
And so in order for God to correct that, in order for God to bring us back to him, because he's constantly calling to us, he's constantly calling us, to receive his mercy, to receive his grace. In order, sometimes he has to do that, is he has to break down that pride so that you realize there's something greater than me. Thus, and it's not me, it's God.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, Lagrange goes through a lot of things in here about how there are a lot of stubborn men out there who that's what it takes in order for the pride to be broken down.
This book I'm reading, He Leadeth Me, that's exactly what I was just reading about this weekend, is just his experience of learning to abandon himself to divine providence, and he realizing, he's like in solitary confinement being questioned every day for hours and hours, and he realized don't resist, just abandon yourself and trust in God's providence to take care of it. I mean, it's a very powerful moment in the book. It's about what you're just talking about.
Yeah, and that's what Lagrange actually says. He says our Lord has such a desire to pardon all of our sins.
Right.
He wants to unite our friendship back together, and so we should ask for the grace to be made aware of our venial sins so that he can grant it. He can grant the mercy towards us.
That's one thing that I know I forget to pray about a lot, is just that I would be given the grace to overcome my vices.
Yes, overcome and be made aware of your venial sins, and to be able to overcome those venial sins.
I prayed that prayer here recently about one vice in particular, and the very day I found myself at ease in confronting it.
But that shouldn't be a surprise to us, because God,
I know.
It's the way of perfection. God wants to unite.
Right.
He wants a friendship with us. He wants us to be in communion with him. And
he told St. Faustina, the greater the sinner, the greater right
they
he
have
has
to
to
his
my
mercy.
He didn't say I will be more merciful, but he actually said that they have a right to his mercy. And he says that. He gives them that right because he is so merciful.
Right. Yes, exactly. So he also talks about the importance of friendship. He talks about the importance of being in communion with all of our Catholic brothers and sisters. And he says it's so important for us men, he specifically says men, to be praying for the other men who are lukewarm or who are even struggling with venial sin, that they may have a softened heart to ask for this grace themselves. And so I was sitting there thinking, like, man, I bet you there was another guy out there who's super, like, way holier than I am, who has been praying that other men are doing this, and hopefully
you're the beneficiary.
Hopefully I take action, you know, and this grace that God has given me this weekend to understand some of the things that I've been doing that I need to cut out.
I mean, I used to be
out.
lukewarm as it gets in college. I mean, I was just that was me. I was lukewarm Niles.
But even Christ says, "Come to me, all who labor and who are overburdened, and I will give you rest." So if you're struggling right now, you feel like that you're in a hole, you can't get out, go to Christ. Go to the sacrament of confession. Run there, and then ask for Christ's mercy and ask for the grace to overcome sin, because we're made to be perfection is the goal. We'll continue a little bit more on the other side of the break. More on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass. All right, just keep. Okay, you have it rolling. So Dave, the question that I was going to ask you though is, your kids are getting old enough now to where they understand sin, they understand venial and mortal sin. How are you teaching?
Well, they don't understand mortal sin. I don't think we've covered that. I mean, they're not old.
How old is Elizabeth?
She's 5.
Oh, okay. I was thinking for some reason she's like 6.
She's tall.
Yeah, she
tall.
looks older than 5.
She's very mature for her age.
She's mature for her age. Spiritually, she's mature for her age.
She
is actually super spiritually mature.
She's done this a couple times. I think I mentioned this. She's done it twice. The second time, Mary did it with her. She's just been at the dinner table and said, "I think that I'm going to fast from sweets for a week." She's 5.
Right.
Okay. The first time she did it, I tried to discourage her a little bit, because like, Elizabeth, I just didn't want to set up for failure, right?
Right.
But she was like, "No, I want to do it." And it's like, okay. And she did it. Like every day at dinner, she'd say, "How many days has it been?" "It's been 3 days." "Okay." And then the next day she'd ask again, "How many?" And then it's like, and we'd say 6 days. "So tomorrow's the last day?" "Tomorrow's the last day." And then like, I couldn't believe it. Like there were times where there's candy. She goes, "Oh, I can't have any."
Well, she came over to one of my kids' birthday parties, and we were having cake and ice cream for the birthday party.
It was during that time.
Yes, and she goes, "I'm sorry." Like I said, like, "Here, Elizabeth, here's your piece of cake and ice cream." She goes, "That's okay. I'm fasting from sweets." And I was like, "Oh,
yeah, me too."
Yeah,
of course.
So
then the second time, Mary did it with her, who was 3 or 4. So she's mature.
My question is how are you going to? We've been using the Baltimore Catechism a lot. Luke has already gotten to made his first confession in communion. How are you going to teach them mortal sin versus venial sin? Like what? How are you going to approach this?
So far, I don't know, but so far, what I do with varying degrees of success, when I'm disciplining them. When I'm disciplining them. Disappruning, maybe.
Ooh.
I like that.
I do too.
For instance.
Father Brian O'Brien hates it when we do that. He hates when we do discipline. It's okay.
Like when people tell me stuff like that, my natural reaction is to do it more.
Yeah, it encourages you. Yeah.
That's just a little insight into the psychology of
David Niles.
David Lukewarm.
Shocker for nobody.
Lukewarm Niles. But okay, so like for instance, if one of the trouble, I'm very tired. I'm sorry. If one of the children gets in trouble for lying, I get onto them and I tell them, Mary, that is a sin, which I don't do other times when they get in trouble. So there are certain things that I emphasize with, like, you're getting in trouble for, it's not just like, oh, don't hit your sister. Mm-hmm. I mean, hitting your sister is, that's a sin, but it's not like thou shalt. Lying is a species of sin that, like, sort of like violence, but it's just different. Lying is, to me, more corruptive in the soul of a young person than an outburst of a passion. And that's, when children have passionate outbursts, it's just part of being a child and learning to master. You just need to correct the behavior more so than inform the intellect. They already know not to, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
But with lying, I typically take an extra step of emphasizing like that lying is a sin, and it's terrible. So I do stuff like that to hopefully emphasize, and so that they get a good groundwork of, the ugliness and the terribleness of sin. When it's time, we'll create distinctions.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
What are you doing?
Well,
because you have Luke, or he's got received. He's received his first communion. He goes to confession.
Yes. So one thing that I do, and I try to do more often, or I need to do more often, but I do, is have a prayer guarding my children from their first mortal sin. Asking our Lord to guard them from their first mortal sin. I think that every
St. Bridget prayer.
Well, St. Bridget prayer has one. Yeah, there's another one also. I think that is from through St. Joseph.
Okay.
But it's very similar to the St. Bridget prayer. And so I would like to continue doing that. So I used the Baltimore Catechism because it just lays it out very well.
Right.
And it gives pictures, and it shows him and I just walked through it with him, and to be able for him to understand the severity of mortal sin and what happens when you commit a mortal sin. It's not God. God never stops loving you. It's that you decide to turn away from God.
Yeah,
and I think that
he respects your decision.
And I think that is.
How do you? What was it that you used? How did you distinguish grave matter?
Well, I think that intuitively we know as humans things that are really bad. I gave a couple of different examples with Luke of different levels of evil, if you will, and asked him, do you think this is grave? Or I said, do you think this is? I think severe. I think is the word I used, just because I don't think he understands grave, and he does understand severe. So, which is weird because, anyway. And I just asked him. I gave him a couple different scenarios. I said, what about this? And what about this? What about this? What about this? And I think intuitively, as humans, we know what's severe and what's not. And children's spirituality is not near as complex as ours because they don't have near the darkened intellect. They don't have near being able to rationalize themselves out of things.
Right.
It's much more cut and dry with them, because they're pure and innocent. And so
mortal sin once again is relative. Actually, it's relative to your knowledge and understanding of the faith. It's grave matter is not relative. Grave matter is objective, but you have to know. That's what the second condition. You have to know that what you're doing is grave matter. So there are things that will not be mortal sin for some people that are for other people because they have a greater knowledge of the faith.
So that's what we just talk about it, and it's so far done.
How did it go?
I
think it went well.
I think that we as parents, at least this is my experience, I complicate things way more than what it should be. I think he's not going to understand this. I don't give him near the benefit of the doubt that I probably should. When it comes to spiritual things, when it comes to physical things, I think I barricade him more than what he should be. Even in chores.
What do you mean you barricade him more?
I don't think that he can do it. Right? So just the other day, last week, I asked him, I was thinking these leaves need to be raked. I don't have time to do it. He needs to have some chore this week. Oh, I'll go ask Luke. I'll go tell Luke, you need to go rake these leaves. And I thought, he doesn't know how to do that. He's not gonna be able to do it. And then I said, no, he's, 7 years old. He can do this.
Let him figure it out.
I walked him out there and I showed him, here's how you do it. Put him in the bag, and he has, I still have him out there. Actually, it's kind of embarrassing, but I still have like 3 or 4, 3 or 4 trash bags out there full of leaves.
Oh, I think you still had Luke out there.
No. So, but
it's days ago, man. We went on a retreat.
But but I don't give him the benefit of the doubt because I think like, oh, he can't do this.
Yeah.
Multiple steps of instructions he can do. You can do just fine. Similarly, I think like, oh well, he can't sit for an hour or kneel for an hour in adoration. He's 7. Of course he can. He absolutely can.
He only weighs like 40 pounds.
And
you know how easy it is to kneel when you only weigh 40 pounds?
This is something that I've struggled with just as a dad, is thinking that and this is something I did not think I was going to struggle with. But I do sometimes, is I put limitations on them, like self-made limitations on them that they don't need.
Because you don't want to set them up for failure.
Probably, but failure necessarily isn't a bad thing for them.
Right.
It's a good learning. It's a good opportunity to learn.
Right.
And so, and pushing them, they need adversity. They need to be able to, be in the grind and like work through things.
I mean, there's a difference between letting someone fail and then like pushing someone so that they always fail.
Sure. And
there's a huge difference there, and that's not what we're talking about.
Right. And so,
because you could push your kids so far that you keep pushing them until they fail, and then all that they'll learn is that, well, I always fail.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not having him read any of the Summa right now. However, he and I can go through some of the.
Why not?
Because I put limitations on
Don't
him.
you want to figure out what it says?
Exactly. You know what? That's a good point. But we can sit down and read through the Baltimore Catechism or read through some of the other things that we have from homeschool.
Sure.
And he comprehends it.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't give him that benefit of the doubt. So I think that we need to push them. They need adversity. They need failure. They need to be able to fail so that way they can get back up and learn again.
Luke, read this here. And what do you think in Thomas's mind is the material distinction between the first and second way?
Right. Yeah. So anyway, that's but I when reading this book, knowing the love of God, it is I highly recommend it. It's been a great book thus far.
By the Grange. Let's call him the Grange.
The Grange?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good with that. It's really, really good. And
sweet. So
we need to be praying for men out there who don't take sin seriously.
Yeah.
Who are lukewarm.
I mean, and that's like one of the things Our Lady has asked of us over and over and over and over again. Pray for sinners, pray for sinners, pray for those who do not love God.
Right. And then pray for the grace to overcome venial sin.
Right.
To be made aware of the venial sins, and then to overcome any venial sin that you may have. Because
the solution
is
to overcoming venial sin. Well, yeah, I mean, Jesus is, of course, but to be more proximate, if I may. The answer is death.
Yeah, mortification.
That
death to sin.
In order to come over, death to yourself is what it is. I mean, venial sin, I think especially in men, resides largely in the appetites. It's not so much the intellect. There is pride, but pride is dangerously. Pride is one of the 7 deadly sins, right? So it's hard to have sins of pride. It can happen that are venial. I mean, pride very quickly becomes a mortal sin.
Mm-hmm.
Because it takes so many evil forms. Pride per se is strange, but so often I think it's true that the vast majority of venial sins, and especially in the life of a man, reside in the appetite. Appetite not just for food, but appetite for visual stimulation or for comfort. I mean, we have appetites for all kinds of things,
mm-hmm,
right?
Mm-hmm.
Disordered appetites.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is in my own life. I mean, I can tell you. So, in order to conquer those, we need to embrace death of some kind. There is a death. So,
Mortification.
Yeah, mortification. But it's not like, oh, if I fast, I will get over my vice of gluttony. That is not what's it is not. It's not an equation, right? So fasting is an avenue by which grace will be given to you in order to embrace the death to self, the denial of self. You do strengthen those muscles, but you still have to do it in the moment. You still have to choose, no, I have had enough. I don't need more. I want more. I will not. I will deny myself more. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, oh, fast and then you'll stop being gluttonous. Mm-hmm. You know, oh, I can eat all the cake I want today because I fasted yesterday, right? You know, like, it's not.
No, in fact, Lagrange even talks about this. Is they're almost inoperative because we have not strengthened them. So even though you fast or you go to confession and you're restored, some of these virtues are almost inoperative because they are very unfolding and undeveloped because we don't ever develop them.
Right.
So even though we had the opportunity to develop them, we haven't, and so it's not a arrow in our quiver, if you will. I mean, it doesn't give us an opportunity to continue growing.
Yeah, I just want you to know that death is what you are headed for, and it's glorious. It's a good death.
Let's just kill it there. Did you like that? Did you like that?
I don't get it. I do get it.
Just hit the record and stream.
I really do. I do get it, actually.
I thought it was a good pun. And the stream.
Yeah. It's, I think the mouse is just a little